All right, you guys, happy Tuesday. We are jumping right back into Becoming Brigitte Season 2. So many emails that we have received. Very good clues that you guys sent us, some answers that we now have. Also have to tell you a crazy fact of what else was going on at Stanford University in the early 1970s. And we actually have audio of the mysterious prisoner 2093 discussing his time in the cell. But first and foremost, we ended yesterday's episode with a question. Why make Brigitte the First Lady of France, right? That's like a weird thing. She got away with so much. Why then make her the First Lady of France? I speculated that there's probably an element of theology here. Welcome back to Candace. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, then you have heard me say many times, everything is theology. But I can't take credit for that. That's actually something that my husband shared with me, at least when we first met. I asked him, why did you decide to study theology at Oxford? I remember thinking back then, like 2018, 2019, of all of the subjects available for a student to take on at university, why would somebody want to pick religion? Especially a religion that you don't necessarily follow. Why do you want to learn about all of this? How silly I was, how wrong I was. Actually, I think now one of my biggest academic regrets is that I went to college, wasted my time when I should have just been studying religion and theology. Because in my political life, I suddenly realized nothing else actually matters, really. Everything else is theater. If you don't know what is guiding someone spiritually speaking, then you can't comprehend what is happening. It was at university that my husband made a decision to convert to Catholicism, and an even stranger decision in my mind, in my 2018 American mind, because it's almost a marker of a public education in America to be anti-Catholic. It's like Catholicism is a no-no. Everything you learn in history, the Catholics were just going wild, doing everything wrong in Europe. And gratefully, America, you're a young country, but you're getting it right. I now have a better understanding today of why that is. And I should say now, isn't it kind of curious that Brigitte is allegedly a devout Catholic? Anybody following the story believing that? As a quote-unquote Catholic, you'll recall that she first got into office, Brigitte Macron wanted to transform the Dome of Notre Dame into a penis. I'm not kidding. You guys remember this. Look, here's the headline. Just to quickly recap here, French president's wife proposed phallus and golden balls for Notre Dame rebuild. And here is a quote from that article, because when Brigitte first entered into office, if we're saying she's supposed to be the wife of, but I guess when Macron first entered into office, the minister of French culture was a woman named Rosalind Bachelot. And Rosalind Bachelot is the one that received the proposal from Brigitte. And here in that article is what Rosalind Bachelot recapped in her book. She wrote, quote, "I do not regret this insubordination when at lunch with Brigitte Macron a few days later, she shows me a project topped with a sort of erect phallus with its base surrounded with golden balls." I'm sorry, what? To be clear, they just got rid of that woman. They replaced her because they were like, okay, you don't want to put the golden balls in the dome. You don't want to do that. You got to go. You got to go bye-bye, Rosalind. And Rosalind does not regret, as she should not, her insubordination, because what on earth? I get it. I know what's happening. Because what better way to destroy your true enemies than from within to say, I'm Catholic, and yeah, Macron and me fell in love. He was 14. I get it. I got to tell you guys something else about myself, a little fact. The first thing that I ever wanted to be in life, I remember this vividly, was an archaeologist. In third grade, I got kind of obsessed. We learned about archaeology. I don't know really what was motivating it beyond learning about Egypt. Needless to say, it didn't work out for me in life, but my interest in artifacts being dug up that reveal secrets from the past, well, that never went away, which is why this artifact there is an artifact, rather, in this Brigitte Macron saga, and it completely piqued my attention. I was like, I feel like I should be paying attention to this for some reason. So here is the true story. It's just a fact. In Amiens, remember, that is the town where both Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron were born. There is an artifact that got discovered in 1845. It is a bronze statuette, and it was located on the property of this military man named Captain Bournel. Now, I'm unsure if it's because of a language barrier that exists, but I'm currently unable to learn anything more about this Captain Bournel other than the fact that this statue was specifically found in the neighborhood of Henryville in Amiens. Now, if Henryville is ringing a bell to you, that's because you will recall that that is the specific neighborhood that Emmanuel Macron grew up with Manette, yeah? So I was interested. And I'm sorry, I'm interested because they decided to name this statue, it's still in Amiens, it's featured in a museum, the God of Amiens. Like, I'm sorry, but if I was just going into my backyard and I dug up something that looked like a pagan figurine, I wouldn't name it the God of anything. I would be like, oh, we found this is interesting, but somebody made the decision to name that the God of Amiens. I needed to know more because you can always count on me to not mind my own business, okay? And like I said, what was compelling me was the name of it, right? None of us would do that. Think about it right now. No matter what you dig up in your backyard, you're not going to place it in your house and call it a god, unless you're maybe pagan yourself. So let's take a look at this statue, right? The statue itself is missing something in its hand, in both sides, actually. You will also note that the statue itself kind of looks like it's a young boy. It has an animal ear. I can tell you now that what is supposed to be in its left hand, you can see something's missing from that left hand, is a snake, okay? And what's supposed to be in that broken arm is he's supposed to be holding grapes. Here is what that statue should look like, okay? On the right-hand side, we know that because that statue is called the God of Besançon, which is south of Paris in France. So that on the left is what is the God of Amiens. On the right, that is the God of Besançon. Again, who's giving these statues this name? I don't know. Now I'm going to explain to you, and I want you to listen very carefully to everything that is represented in this unique statue, God, quote unquote, God of Amiens, okay? King Midas is represented by the animal ear. Cybele, who was a demon and also the ancient mother goddess of Anatolia, who castrates herself, is castrated, is represented by the snake. And then Dionysus, also goes by the name Attis, is represented by the grapes. Okay, that's the effeminate-looking male. And lastly, the goat ear is Pan. I'm going to tell you the story of how these all come together, how these mythological figures are all related to the same story. As it turns out, the statue relates to the pagan belief in how Phrygia, which is a region in modern-day Turkey, in Anatolia, came to be. I'm showing you that on the map. It is relevant. Turkey is always very relevant. The story goes that there was an oracle that was consulted to determine who would become the next king of Phrygia. Now, consulting an oracle, generally speaking, typically involves some high priestess who becomes possessed spiritually by the deities and is able to communicate messages. This particular oracle declared that it was going to be Gordius who would become the king of Phrygia. And he would do this once he rode his cart into Phrygia alongside the high priestess Agdistis, okay? Agdistis was a hermaphrodite. The gods feared this monstrosity, saw it as a demon, and so they castrated Agdistis. And then what was left was a woman, I suppose, and she becomes Cybele. Some of this is starting to sound familiar to you. You're like, it kind of the stories mix. You get the Greek, the Roman, the Turkish virgin, but follow me with this. I want to be clear here, okay? The ancient Turks To the ancient Turks, there is no higher goddess that is worshipped than this priestess Cybele. She is their magna mater, the great mother of Anatolia. So Cybele goes on and she mothers 2 children. Don't worry, I'm going to actually show you a mythological family chart. Cybele goes on and she mothers 2 children. The first one she mothers with King Gordius, right? They rode into town together. That child is Midas. Everybody knows King Midas, right? King Midas, the golden touch. And her other child, who she mothers, is with someone else. And it was a bit of a scandal of how this child came about. That child is Dionysus. Now, you will recall that Brigitte Macron from Amiens handpicked Thomas Jolly to put on that now notorious Olympic show that outraged the world. Brigitte was intimately involved in the planning of that performance for some reason. When the world objected to what looked like a promotion of trans ideology and a mockery of the Last Supper, curiously, the Élysée Palace rebutted, quote unquote, clarified to the public that it was actually supposed to be a tribute to Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and revelry that is represented in this god of Amiens figurine, okay? Brigitte actually went so far, this meant so much to her, to clarify this point that she stipulates it in her lawsuit against me. That performance was actually about a Greek god. It says Owens went so far as to claim that the 2024 Olympic opening ceremony, which was a tribute to Greek mythology, was designed to honor Brigitte Macron because she is transgender. Oh, so you're doubling down on that. This is actually supposed to be something related to Greece. Again, I should have noticed it then, but that's another clue. They say way too much, the Élysée Palace, way too much when they pretend to be outraged about something. Back to Dionysus, right, the second child of Cybele. In Greek mythology, the story goes that Zeus became quite enchanted with this priestess Cybele. Zeus, if you know, he was cheating all the time on Hera, his wife, and one of these individuals, it's Cybele. He gets enchanted by this priestess, and he begins to see her on the side, and the end result is that Cybele becomes pregnant with his child. Hera, Zeus's wife, decides like, oh, this is crazy, and she's in a fit of rage, and she decides that she's going to disguise herself as a nurse, and she's going to ingratiate herself with the pregnant Cybele and manipulate Cybele by sowing seeds of doubt in her mind. Like, oh, are you sure that your paramour is Zeus, like the god Zeus? And Cybele's like, yeah, I'm sure. She's like, how are you sure? Have you ever seen him? Has he ever presented himself in his full godly divine form? Like, I feel like you should find out whether or not that's actually Zeus that's trying, and it works. The reason Hera wants Cybele to ask Zeus to appear before her in his divine glory is because, mythologically speaking, if a god appeared in his full divinity before a human or a priestess, it would automatically kill that person. The sight is just too divine. And like I said, Hera's trick works. Cybele then says, Zeus, if you're actually Zeus, appear before me. And instantly, Zeus is like, no, don't make me do this, don't make me do this. He does it. Cybele is then struck by a thunderbolt of lightning, and Cybele dies and goes into the underworld. The impact of this lightning strike forces her son, Dionysus, to be born prematurely. Zeus then rescues this premature Dionysus by sewing him into his thigh. When it comes time for Dionysus to be born again, like twice born, Zeus knows that he has to hide this child because Hera's going to freak out. Like, what? You keeping the child? This is not happening. So he asks the messenger god Hermes to take Dionysus into the forest, where he is instead going to be raised by a half goat known as Pan. Here we are, Pan in the forest. So to be clear, Pan, this half goat, becomes the foster parent to Dionysus. I'm going to show you the family chart because this is very relevant, okay? So you've got Cybele up there, right? The demon of Anatolia. She mothers the child with Zeus. She's now in the underworld, right? You've got Dionysus. On the other side, Cybele and King Gordius are going to have Midas, okay? The interesting thing about Pan, this half goat, some people interpret him as Satan, is he's a bit of a lush. He's always drunk in the forest because when he is in a drunken stupor, he's able to tell prophecies. So Pan is the god of shepherds, flock, and drunken revelry. Pan does, as he is asked, he raises, he fosters Dionysus, and Dionysus then grows to be this very beautiful, as they describe it, effeminate-looking young boy who clearly adores Pan with the horns. One night, Pan is hitting the bottle a little too hard, right? And he is found in a drunken stupor by the now King Midas's men. They find this like half goat. They bring him back to Midas's palace. And of course, King Midas recognizes Pan because of his dad, King Gordius. And he resolves that he's going to keep Pan safe and comfortable in his palace. Now, Dionysus is panicked because she can't find her foster father. He is panicked because he can't find his foster father. And then he's completely relieved when he discovers that he's with King Midas, which that's actually his half brother, right? Cybele is both the mother of King Midas and also the mother of Dionysus, this pretty boy. So happy is Dionysus, who is half god because Zeus is her real father, that he says, I'll do anything you want, Midas. I'll give you anything you want as a reward, a gift for taking care of my foster father, Pan. Your wish is my command, and King Midas is greedy. He's very greedy. He says, I would like the Midas touch. Everything I touch, I would like to turn to gold. And the Midas touch is granted. Now, of course, that touch turned out to be a bit of a curse. King Midas goes on to accidentally turn his daughter into gold when he tries to console her. And then he realizes, okay, maybe I shouldn't have asked for this. So he goes back and he starts pleading with his half sibling. And he's like, look, bro, I really need you to kind of get rid of this thing. I know I loved gold so much, but I didn't really think through my request. Please, just let me get rid of this. Dionysus eventually obliges and he tells Midas to go wash his hands in the river Pactolus, and the gold will instead be transferred there. Now, just popping into ancient life, in case you didn't know this, Pactolus, that river, ironically, that is where an absurd amount of gold and silver was found beneath that river. In fact, that river became the source, and this is important, of the very first gold coins that were used in the ancient world. Banking begins right here, guys. I can't make it up. I promise. Look it up. Begins right here in Turkey. Now back to our family. Dionysus, like I said, he's now a young adult, half god. He wants his mom back. He just really wants Cybele back. Cybele's in the underworld, so he resolves, I'm going to journey and do what I have to take, go into the underworld. I'm going to retrieve her. And that journey is not without its obstacles, obviously. He has to enter into the realm of the dead, sacrifice a lot to bring his mom back. This is, again, why Dionysus and Cybele are associated with this idea of a rebirth. Now back from the underworld, Dionysus becomes the consort to mommy Cybele. And it gets a little complicated. The story goes that his mom, Cybele, falls in love with him. And his foster parents, people, the nymphs in the forest, they didn't really like that. It's like, whoa, mom, he's like a young boy, adult, young. What are we doing here, falling in love? This is weird. So they think it's weird, this creepy old castrated mommy macking on her beautiful son. And they had other plans for him. They take him away. They want him to marry someone else. But the love that this high priestess Cybele felt for that boy, her son, it was too strong. Man, this is really starting to sound a bit familiar. This is the most Amiens story ever. Long story short, Dionysus and Attis live happily ever after. Dionysus and Cybele live happily ever after. After she drives him mad and he castrates himself as well. It's a lot of castration happening in the story. You should know that out of this should not shock you at all, cults were formed. These cults are known as the cult of Cybele or the cult of Dionysus and Attis. You need to look this up. The people that follow this cult are known as the Galli. And to become a high priestess in the cult of Dionysus, you have to castrate yourself. That's not me saying this. I'm not making this up. I just looked into this statue. Here it is. You can read it on the English Heritage site. It tells you about the Galli breaking Roman gender norms, a little piece of LGBTQ plus history, I bet. The Galli were priests in the cult of the goddess Cybele. They may have been devoted specifically to her consort, Attis, that's Dionysus, who had castrated himself in a fit of divine frenzy. On initiation to the cult, the Galli also castrated themselves, and afterwards they dress exclusively in women's clothing. They therefore occupied an ambiguous space in Roman notions of gender that many modern transgendered and non-binary people have identified with. I bet. Castrating yourself and then only dressing in female clothes. I kid you not. This is apparently the god of Amien. To initiate yourself into this cult, how it works is there has to be this night of revelry. This night, of course, where you're trying to summon Pan, a night where people wear horns, they make these tributes to Pan, and they practice what is known as like orgiastic rituals, basically sex magic. Lines are crossed. You can look this up. I have been tracing this through the centuries and realizing this cult never really went out of fashion. Lines are crossed. There's pedophilia. There's incest. It's all encouraged in these nights of revelry. And you should also know that theater is a component of this cult. Dionysus is the Greek god of theater. That is actually where Western theater stems from. So when we look across the world and we see all these people in positions of power and we learn that Justin Trudeau was a drama instructor, Zelensky was an actor, Emmanuel Macron was an actor being instructed by Brigitte, it of course makes you ask yourself the reasonable question, did this cult really survive through the ages? And it did. I told you, I traced it. The cult has its features every time. There's Pan. There's a young boy, the goat worship. There's always a young boy that he is raising. And then there's always the Midas in every story. I was therefore not actually surprised to learn that a statue giving a tribute to Pan was also found in the Medici family villa. The Medicis would have been the Midases of their time in Florence in 1787. Look at this statue. So much of what we need to get into is the theology. That is obviously the half goat. And this statue meant a lot to the Medici family. They actually transferred it to their villa in Florence. And it is, Pan tutoring one of his many Eromenos, which is just like young boys, essentially. I don't know, guys. All I'm saying is that it's interesting that we're discussing this whole becoming Brigitte thing, and Brigitte decides to put on this Dionysian festival for the Olympics where people are cross-dressing, and then we just find out that this is the quote-unquote god of her and Emmanuel's hometown. It's just weird, okay? It was also weird that at Brigitte's wedding to Emmanuel, they chose this very strange cake topper with horns. From Xavier Poussard's book, Becoming Brigitte, he writes this, quote, regarding that strange wedding, and I think, do you have that up? Everything there is strange. From the sleeveless and particularly short dress that's worn by Brigitte to Emmanuel Macron's pink tie knot, not to mention the cake topper, possibly evoking the horns of Baphomet. Strangely, he continues, this wedding did not appear in the local weekly Les Echos du Touquet for October 20th, 2007. The only event mentioned at the town hall is a christening, end quote. So yeah, it's a weird wedding, and they couldn't find that this wedding was reported on in the local press, and no explanation for that cake topper. On a further fashion note, back in 1972, the Rothschilds family had this infamous party, a surrealist ball, where guests were required to wear costumes, and it was hosted by Baroness Helene de Rothschild. And I have to say, I wouldn't wear this. Like, I wouldn't wear that she's wearing there. It really makes you wonder, but you're not allowed to wonder, by the way. People, even if you ask AI, it says any questions about what she was wearing at night is deeply anti-Semitic. I mentioned all of this to you because as we're pulling together the pieces of the Epstein story and we're talking about Sigmund Freud and we're getting about Emmanuel Macron, you start to see these themes. Theology is very, very relevant. It might be time for all of us to pick up an old Bible, not a new one. They're changing things around already. It's pretty clear in the Bible that the Ashkenaz are the Turks, and they are not Semitic. They cannot be Semitic because they are of the lineage of Japheth and Gomer. You got to learn about Gog of Magog, the prophesied war against God's people, and to understand that to accomplish that, this element of theater that we are seeing, theater and infiltration, it is so important, or very important to the Dionysian cult. So learn more about Dionysus, and I think you will be provided a lot more clarity about what it is that we are facing. And no, you are not crazy, okay? In fact, I would argue that the people that are running the world are out of their minds, truly and utterly out of their minds. I'm going to show you more that we have discovered about prisoner 2093, allow you to listen to some audio from that. First, I want to tell you guys about Riverbend Ranch because I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch. I love their steaks. The Black Angus beef is famous for its fantastic flavor. Riverbend Ranch has taken Black Angus beef to a whole new level. Over the last 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been creating an elite Angus herd by using ultrasound to select genetically superior cattle with a focus on flavor and tenderness. Each year, Riverbend Ranch provides about 850 elite Black Angus bulls containing these special genetics to over 260 Western U.S. ranches. Those partnership ranches receive a substantial premium from Riverbend Ranch for raising those calves without the use of growth hormones or antibiotics. And every fall, the calves containing these elite genetics return to the Riverbend Ranch to spend the following summer in lush mountain pastures. When you purchase from Riverbend Ranch, you are not only supporting the 64 cowboys and their families who work on the ranch, but you also support the over 260 other U.S. ranches and the hundreds of American families who work on those ranches. It is born in the USA, raised in the USA, processed here in the USA. The meat is aged to perfection for 21 days, and it's shipped directly from their ranch to your home. This is not your average Black Angus beef. I told you guys it's way more flavorful. You will totally enjoy it. It's tender. It's truly the best Angus beef that I've ever had. Right now, when you head over to riverbendranch.com and use promo code Candace at checkout, you will get $20 off your first order. Trust me, you're going to be very impressed. Visit riverbendranch.com and use promo code Candace. I'll also remind you guys about American financing because the cost of everything is still out of control. Many of us are relying on credit cards to cover essentials. It is just the debt piling up. And if you feel that way, you're not alone. Americans collectively owe over $1 trillion in credit card debt. You might have considered reaching out to my friends at American Financing, but maybe you hesitated to do that because you didn't want to give up that low mortgage rate that you're enjoying. Well, there's good news. They have created the Smart Equity Loan, a solution designed to help you take control of your finances without touching your current mortgage. Unlike an HELOC, which can have varied interest rates, the Smart Equity Loan offers a fixed rate. That means one predictable monthly payment, giving you peace of mind. This loan allows you to leverage the equity in your home to pay off high interest debt free of your cash flow. It frees up your cash flow and it keeps your existing low mortgage rate intact. It only takes 10 minutes to get started. There's no upfront hidden fees. So call American Financing and start saving now. The number is 800-795-1210. Again, that's 800-795-1210, or you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. That's americanfinancing.net/Owens. Okay, let's start with a couple of updates here. First and foremost, thank you to the many of you who wrote us regarding Furas. We told you Furas, Warren Furas, is what was listed in the digital archives over at Stanford, which we accessed as the individual that met up with on Visitors Day and met up with our Jean-Michel Trogneux lookalike. Well, you guys let us know FURIS is actually military naval shorthand. It stands for further assignments. So that digital entry for the names of the people who visited the prisoners on visiting day, that means exceptionally for our JMT lookalike, prisoner 2093, he instead has this entry that reads Warren on further assignments. That is true. We looked it up. FURIS particularly is a naval shorthand term that means further assignment, which means that there is a person that is in flux. And the abbreviation is used when a sailor is being transferred to a new command, but their specific duties have not yet been designated. So now the bigger question is, what is Warren? We got Ferris on further assignment, but what does Warren mean? Is that a place? Is that a person? Send me what your ideas are. You guys are much smarter than me. I literally feel like I am just getting a rapid fire education in all things military at this moment. And I'm starting on a basis of knowing nothing, especially about the Navy. So we'll see what you guys come up with. Something that I had wanted to mention to you guys yesterday, but we were kind of running out of time, was that Stanford University campus, on top of everything that's happening, in 1967, they became one of the only places, there were only about 10 across the US, that began sex change operations, transgendered surgeries. I kid you not, guys. I'm going to show you because you're not going to believe me. It sounds a lot of times like I'm making this stuff up, but I'm not. This was published in the Stanford newspaper, and it exists in their archive from that time. This article particularly is from 1973, so that's actually 2 years after the Stanford prison experiment. Sex change surgery arranged as part of Med Center project. It tells us that the patients learn how to set their hair and sit and walk like members of the opposite sex as part of a Stanford University Medical Center sex change program. Quote, rehabilitation is the main focus of the program, says program coordinator Pat Gandy. Surgery may or may not be a part of an individual's rehabilitative process. However, if we're going to do this surgery, we want the individual to be able to fit the social norms, to fit into society as normal males or females. Since Stanford began, the article goes on to say, since Stanford began performing sex change operations in 1967, some 500 candidates have approached the hospital, but only 10% actually underwent surgery, Gandy said. And it goes under this new subheading, only program. Stanford offers the only such program on the West Coast and is among about 10 nationwide, he added. Potential candidates undergo extensive physical and mental testing and are evaluated by a team of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and former patients, Gandy said. He said the evaluators look for motivation and physical resemblance to the opposite sex. They must be physically capable of undergoing the surgery and must have no history of psychosis. Then it tells us that for the 10% who have surgery, it is not done for at least 12 months when we feel comfortable and the patient feels comfortable with the decision, Gandy said in an interview. People who would not be candidates may enjoy the role of opposite sex, but don't necessarily desire the surgical change. I mean, that is kind of just stunning. The only place in the whole West Coast, if you wanted to get it done, Stanford University, at the exact time when our Jean-Michel Trogneux lookalike, prisoner 2093, who we cannot identify, we're desperate to identify him. And maybe you are. Maybe you're watching this and you're like, it's me. I'm Thomas Williams. It was me the whole time. I look just like JMT. It's crazy. But I'm not him. Trust me, bro. Reach out, please. Email us, tips@CandiceOwens.com. By the way, that is something, being the first to embark in sex change surgeries and transgender surgeries is something that Stanford to this day still brags about. You can check out this headline. You know, it's a part of LGBTQ awareness, new historical collection on gender affirming care at Stanford. They're like, we did this first. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. In celebration of Pride Month, they're like, we are just showcasing everything that we did to be the first people that took care of trans people. You have to wonder, as we all watch the world go trans mad, are we being indoctrinated, you guys, into somebody else's theology? Are we being indoctrinated into somebody else's faith? We talked about this combination of the male and the female. The more you learn about Cybele, the more you learn about Attis and or Dionysus. They try to pretend these people were not the same. Absolutely, they are the same. You really start to understand what is happening in this world. So, I mean, thanks for the tidbit, Amien. Also we received tons of emails regarding George Pompidou. We told you that was the prime minister who became the president of France after this color revolution was staged to overthrow Charles de Gaulle, who was much more like, no, we're not doing this thing. We're not moving away from gold. This is not a good idea for us to just join the global fiat system. Well, this is one of many comments that we received. I'm reading this particular one from YouTube. This person writes, Candace, important nota bene here. George Pompidou was the director general of the Rothschild Bank in Paris before becoming prime minister and later the president of France. Working under the leadership of Guy de Rothschild, Pompidou joined the bank in 1955 and quickly rose to a management position, working there until 1962. Thanks for your work. He is correct. I fact-checked that. It is true that George Pompidou, very similar story to Emmanuel Macron. I mean, it's almost the same thing. Just like a hand on him, a Midas touch upon him, gets pulled to the ranks and becomes the president after they had to get rid of de Gaulle. And yeah, then France came and picked up their goal in this mysterious naval fleet. Apparently, Air Force was involved. We don't know. We don't really know how that happened, what route the gold take. Lastly, a lot of French people, all French-speaking people, I should say, all over the world, Canadian French people and France French people wrote to us to explain the unusual, overly wordy and unnecessarily philosophical manner that prisoner 2093 speaks in the transcript of his exit interview, speaking about his identity, the self. It was very confusing. And I said, that ain't American. We don't speak like that. Okay, you can learn the language, but there's something that goes beyond the language, which is this regular? And the answer is no. That speech was incredibly irregular. It was incredibly confusing. Well, guess what? The audio on that actually does exist. There's no visual, but there is an audio that was up on the Stanford website. I don't know how I had missed it. Once again, as we play this audio, I want you to pay close attention to the struggle that this person has with R's. This is very clear to me that this is not a native English speaker. I would state almost unequivocally that this is not a native English speaker. Unfortunately, because he's discussing his role, we're going to keep hearing him try to pronounce these R's. Take a listen.
I suppose you could say I was playing my best role, because I believe that life really depends upon what role you play as to how you act. Mm-hmm. And in almost any situation that I've been in, I can describe it in terms of a role I'm playing. Mm-hmm. And being in prison, having to follow all of these rules, it was one of the first opportunities I've had to play the basic role, or at least as far as I can understand, the basic role on which the other roles are built.
Okay.
And I can't describe self in terms of anything but role. I believe that the most important thing is results, and not what the attempts are.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
I would change to most any role, not most any role that can be built upon the basic role, in order to accomplish what the basic role would want to accomplish but could not accomplish by itself, by acting as a
see. Okay.
No, she does not see.
So you've been doing the role of prisoner this week. Now, suppose the random selection had ended up with you being a guard instead. How well do you think you could have gotten into the role of a guard?
I think that I could have gotten into the role of a good guard as well. I think I could have gotten into the role to where I would be satisfied with the role. Mm-hmm. By someone else's standards, I don't know.
I see someone in the chat said the way that individual pronounces opportunity, yeah, it just falls. It's like you just lose it a little bit. The acting's almost there, but it's not there. Find me, prisoner 2093. Also, shout out to the individual that pulled this together for us. I am not technologically gifted, and this person, I guess, on the Face app. Is it the Face app, Skylar? The Face app, I think, right? I guess. they use the Face app, and I guess there's a setting where you could just turn any person. I think I remember this was becoming quite a thing where people were posting on Facebook and social media, here's me as a guy. They were just kind of like changing their faces from man to woman. So this person was playing around and put up a picture of Jean-Michel Trogneau and just turned it into a woman. And look at this. This is from, again, the Face app. This is not actually, this is obviously doctored, but take a look at this. This person turns, this first stage, it's just Jean-Michel, and then show me the next one, Skylar, from the Face app. Amazing. That is amazing. Using this app, going, just feminize this. This is what is done by AI if you take the photo of Jean-Michel. I will never unsee that. I will absolutely never unsee that. It is amazing. I got a crazy email, by the way, of somebody who thinks that they have found Jean-Michel in a yearbook in America, but I promise you that email came in 2 minutes before we went live. I was going to shut down everything for the day and be like, we need to confirm this. It's over. But we haven't had time to actually see if it is accurate. If it is, this is insane. I don't know. I'll follow up with you guys. Let me just get to telling you guys about Cozy Earth before I get to some of your comments. You already work hard, you fight for your family, your values, and your future. So when the workday ends, your 5 to 9 should be about one thing, which is comfort. That's why I love Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth is on a mission to make your evenings and every moment that you spend at home the most comfortable part of your day. They have pajamas and loungewear that are made from premium, responsibly sourced viscose bamboo. They're soft, breathable, and temperature regulating, which is why I can't go a night without using them. Cozy Earth offers more than just clothing. They have perfected their bubble cuddle blanket. This blanket offers a combination of comfort and style with its distinctively textured bubble design, intricately woven from ultra soft fibers. And just so you guys know, Cozy Earth stands by their quality. Their blankets come with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. And their apparel is backed by a lifetime guarantee. So that's pretty impressive, okay? They mean it when they say it's made to last. So go ahead to CozyEarth.com and use code Candace at checkout, and you'll get up to 40% off your new favorite pajama set or blanket. And if you get a post-purchase survey, let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. That's CozyEarth.com. Use code Candace and elevate your downtime with Cozy Earth. Also telling you guys about Nimi Skincare. You guys know I love them. Back in 2020, there were so many brands that were taking political stances that did not align with my values. I started asking myself, why am I still supporting them? So I dug into the products that I was bringing into my own home, especially skincare, and that's when I found Nimi. Nimi Skincare shares my values. The products are fantastic. Nimi is conservative-owned, proudly American-made, and committed to clean standards, so you get skincare without compromise. One of my favorite skincare routines with Nimi is their Clean Transformation Trio. You first start with their Pure Punch Protein Cleanser to remove makeup, SPF, and grime without stripping, while nourishing with proteins and botanicals. Then you can use their Crystal Clear Toner with glycolic hyaluronic acid to smooth texture, refine the look of pores, and deliver that deep, lasting hydration. And then finally, you wrap up with the age-defying antioxidant moisturizer, which is your daily shield with antioxidants that help fight fine lines, wrinkles, and environmental stress for firmer, brighter-looking skin. Go ahead and head over to NimiSkincare.com. Use code Candace10. You'll get 10% off your entire order. With Nimi, you are supporting faith, family, and also freedom. You're getting effective skincare that delivers age-defying results. Again, that's NimiSkincare.com. Use code Candace10 at checkout. All right, you guys, what are you thinking? What are the chances? I'm just saying. Who named it the God of Amiens? Somebody read a textbook. Somebody who speaks French, tell me who gave it the name. It's just a funny name. Also, who is Captain Bornell? I need to know everything. I'm so nosy. I need to know what they're digging up in their backyard in Henryville. Okay, I need to know. I just have to know all of these things immediately. And so I am interested. I'm interested in every aspect of this story. It's going to cost you, Brigitte. Look, I don't have the money that you have behind you, but I'm interested and I am focused on exposing everything because there is, like I said, a true spiritual darkness here that I believe is being revealed, right? I believe it's wrapped its way around this earth and is being revealed. Lexi writes, please continue the Epstein series. It was getting so good. I love your work. Don't worry, we are not done with any. These series are ongoing. They're all ongoing because until we get the entire world awakened to evil, we got to keep going. Moderator Marzi writes, so this cult of Dionysus is literally proving everything is actually fake and gay. Yeah, the theater element of this is incredible, to realize that you could basically be military in performance. Think about this, military grade actors. And I've always, I was suspicious about this. Did I think that I was going to be able to trace this to the cult of Dionysus? No. But there are just people that I just always have a question mark on, like Sean Penn, who's always there at the wrong or right time, getting involved. I'm like, this guy's got to be in the CIA, right? There are military grade actors. Of course there are. I'm, by the way, saying that allegedly with Sean Penn. I don't know for a fact. I don't know. Okay. But sometimes I just know. I don't know, but I know. I think about this because these people, essentially, they're gypsies, okay? They're gypsies. They can put on a performance, transform, and become something else, and they make people around them believe that they're this thing. And it's incredible to consider how much the field of psychology dedicated to seeing if you could impact the psyche, the mass psyche through utter performance. And yeah, if you read the book Chaos, the 60s, man, they were really into psychology and they were really into performance. And this happened all over the world. And I think it's been going on for much longer than we think. Holly writes, Candace, you should look into the cults where the men would castrate their genitals and place them on trees as a ritual. That's the same story. That's the story of Addis. This is connected to the tradition of putting red balls on a Christmas tree during the winter solstice. Oh my gosh, I will never be able to unread that. I will never be able to unread that. I know exactly what you're talking about because the story of Addis and the forest and what happens after he castrates himself. I am so upset that I will never be able to unread that. Thank you for that. Crikey writes, it's amazing what you find when you want to know if the president of France's wife has well, ask Tim Dillon. It is. It is. And like I said, this entire journey obviously is there are so many things that are just God. That making me interested in this, making me passionate enough about it that I didn't let it go when the entire media came down and was like, no, this is crazy. The idea that, and I'm like, what are you talking? This is like a very solid story. And now the entire world's being tuned in and listening to it. Maggie writes, if we are not in the Matrix, it is at least an alternate universe that we are beginning to see alongside our reality. My head hurts. Yeah. Oh, it's a matrix, my friends. It is a matrix. And like I said, you might want to buy yourself an old Bible. Get into understanding where these tribes went, what they were up to. No, not everybody was Shemitic, from Shem. It's very important. It's a reason actually that they made us, to indoctrinate us further into their cult. When you learn in school, it's science, it's transgenderism. They turned everything into a science. They realized this is the hack. Tell people you're too smart to believe in God while they believe in their gods, and they're going to indoctrinate you into doing things to worship their gods, like abortion, the sacrifice that is being made to their gods, of course. And you can trace that through the times to a specific tribe. The murder of children. You will always know them by their fruits, right? And this transgenderism thing, I was telling you, the Kabbalah, they believe the Kabul, that is rooted in Turkey, right? The Kabbalah, this combination of the masculine, this is like, oh my gosh, to them, that's peak. That's Sibylle, that's hermaphrodite. The hermaphrodite Sibylle or Agdatus, Distus, whichever name you want to use, whether you're reading Roman, Greek, Turkish, Egyptian, stories are told over and over again. And it makes your head hurt, but it also gives you clarity because if you're not in the cults, then you got to fight the cults. And do you know the best way to fight them? The author of lies? With truth. It's that easy. It's that easy. Rebecca writes, Candace, you should read into the Titanic disaster. Oh, come on. You know, I already know about the Federal Reserve and the story of the Titanic. Basically, getting back to this gypsy cult, the gypsies, as we learned in my book club, they established Hollywood. So the ultimate trick, the carnies establishing Hollywood and then giving everything a screen, is it allows them to tell their story and make us feel overcome with emotions. It allows them, it's almost a way to possess us with lies. And yeah, the Titanic story wasn't really kind of about a woman throwing, what was it? What was she throwing into the ocean? Emerald into the ocean and falling in love with Leonardo da Vinci. What is it? Sapphire. Yeah, it was Sapphire. You're totally right. And she's like, my heart will go on. And she's like this. Yeah, it wasn't that. That's not real, guys. I'm sorry to tell you. And when you're ready, I know now might seem a little too early because we've got a lot to digest. when you're ready to discuss the moon landing that Brigitte experienced with Americans, you let me know. And if you're ready for that, there's already a past episode on that and what that had to do with, believe it or not, sex magic, cults, people, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the precursor to the Apollo program. They were practicing ritualistic sex. When you're ready for that, the cult of Dionysus is in the NASA story, and so it feels kind of appropriate, maybe potentially interesting pathway that we can go down is to explore why Brigitte was here when she experienced the moon landing. And how exactly, by the way, did she experience that? I have so many questions, and I can't wait to get this mythological woman under oath. All right, guys, I'll see you over at the book club, and otherwise, see you guys tomorrow.